The Grand Proving Arena on Station Kelvar 9 was the largest combat facility in the known galaxy. Thousands of aliens from dozens of different species filled the seats that rose up in rings around the fighting floor. The noise was incredible. Creatures clicked, roared, hummed, and made sounds that human ears could barely understand. But everyone had come to see the same thing. They wanted to watch the champion fight. Lieutenant Amy Brooks walked beside Ambassador Paul Henderson through the wide corridor that led to the viewing platform. She kept her face calm even though her heart was beating fast. The other members of the Earth delegation followed behind them. Kevin Morris, their cultural expert, kept looking around at all the strange aliens. Helen Grant carried her datapad and recorded everything she saw. Young Greg Sanders stayed quiet, his face pale with worry. They had arrived at the station 3 days ago with a simple goal. Earth needed mining rights to an asteroid belt rich with valuable minerals. The Crithani Consortium wanted the same belt. According to galactic law, disputes like this had to be settled in the arena. Champion against champion, winner takes all. The problem was that Earth had never sent anyone to fight in the Grand Proving Arena before. They had no idea what to expect. The viewing platform gave them a clear look at the arena floor below. The fighting area was huge, at least 100 feet across. With a smooth surface that looked like polished stone, lights shone down from above, making everything bright and clear. Around the edges, thousands of aliens waited for the match to begin. Kliktar, the arena coordinator, came to greet them. He was an insectoid alien, thin and tall, with 6 eyes that moved independently of each other. His translator device made his clicking sounds into words the humans could understand. "Welcome, Earth delegation," Kliktar said. His voice sounded nervous. "You understand the rules, yes? Each side sends one champion. They fight until one cannot continue or surrenders. The winner's people get what they came for." "We understand," Ambassador Henderson said. His voice was steady, but Amy could see the tension in his shoulders. "Has anyone ever defeated the Crithani champion?" Kliktar's eyes all focused on Henderson at once. 17 species have tried. 17 species have failed. The longest any fighter lasted was 47 seconds. Greg made a small sound of despair. Helen typed notes into her pad with shaking fingers. Kevin closed his eyes and took a deep breath. The arena floor suddenly filled with light. The crowd erupted in cheers and roars. A gate on the far side opened, and the champion emerged. Zarketh was enormous. He stood nearly 8 feet tall, with 4 massive arms that ended in 3-fingered hands. His body was covered in natural armor plates that looked harder than steel. When he moved, it was with a speed that seemed impossible for something so large. His species, the Crithani, were known throughout the galaxy as the greatest warriors. Zarketh had held the championship title for 2 full cycles, without a single loss. The champion walked to the center of the arena and raised all 4 arms. The crowd went wild. He turned in a slow circle, showing himself to everyone, accepting their worship. Ambassador Henderson turned to his small team. "We need to make a decision. We can forfeit and lose the mining rights, or we send someone to fight." "We should forfeit," Greg said immediately. "Look at him. He'll kill whoever we send." "We can't forfeit," Helen argued. "Those mining rights are worth billions. Earth needs those resources." "What good are resources if we're dead?" Greg shot back. Amy had been quiet, watching Zarketh carefully. She had spent the last 3 days studying every recording she could find of his fights. She had watched him defeat warriors from 17 different species. She had seen him move, strike, and dominate. But she had also noticed something that no one else seemed to see. "I'll do it," Amy said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. Ambassador Henderson shook his head immediately. "Absolutely not. I'm not sending you down there to die." "I have a plan," Amy said. She kept her eyes on Zarketh as she spoke. "He's strong and fast, but he fights sloppy. He's never had to learn real technique because he's always been stronger than his opponents. I've been watching him. He has patterns, habits, weaknesses. You think you can beat that?" Kevin pointed down at the arena, where Zarketh was flexing his 4 arms, each one thick with muscle. Yes, Amy said simply. But we're running out of time. The rules say we have 10 minutes to declare a champion, or we automatically forfeit. Henderson looked at her for a long moment. Amy had been his security chief for 2 years. He had seen her train, seen her fight in practice sessions. She was a former Marine combat instructor with 15 years of experience. But this was different. This was an 8-foot alien warrior who had never lost a match. Are you sure? Henderson asked. I'm sure, Amy said. Henderson took a deep breath and nodded. He signaled to Kliktar, who had been waiting nervously nearby. Earth is ready to send our champion. Kliktar's 6 eyes all widened. You have someone? Lieutenant Amy Brooks will represent Earth, Henderson said formally. The announcement echoed through the arena in multiple languages. The crowd's reaction was immediate. Some aliens made confused sounds. Others began to laugh. Amy was 5 feet 6 inches tall and weighed 140 pounds. Compared to Zarketh, she looked like a child. Amy made her way down to the arena floor. She wore simple combat clothing, dark pants, and a fitted shirt that allowed her to move freely. No armor, no special equipment. Each fighter would receive the same weapon, a standard energy baton that could deliver stunning pulses. As she walked across the arena floor, the laughter grew louder. Zarketh turned to look at her, and his face twisted into what might have been a smile. His species had mandibles instead of a normal mouth, and they clicked together in a pattern that sounded like harsh laughter. Kliktar met Amy in the center of the arena and handed her an energy baton. It was a simple cylinder about 2 feet long that hummed with power. Are you certain you wish to continue? He asked quietly. There is no shame in reconsidering. I'm certain, Amy said. Kliktar nodded and backed away. He raised his voice so the whole arena could hear. The terms are declared. For Earth, Lieutenant Amy Brooks. For the Krithani Consortium, Champion Zarketh. The match will begin in 30 seconds. Zarketh walked toward Amy until he stood just 15 feet away. He towered over her, all 4 arms hanging loose and ready. Through his translator, his voice boomed across the arena. Earth sends this small, weak creature to fight me? Do you wish to die so badly, human? Then he did something that would become famous across the galaxy. He raised one of his massive arms and pointed directly at Amy. His mandibles clicked in that harsh laughter. His whole body shook with amusement. The crowd joined in, filling the arena with the sounds of various species expressing mockery and disbelief. Amy stood still and calm. She held her baton in a relaxed grip and watched Zarketh carefully. She noticed how he shifted his weight, which arms he favored, how he turned his body. Every tiny detail mattered. The countdown began. Kliktar's voice echoed through Amy, covered the 15 feet between them in less than a second. Most species in the galaxy had faster reflexes than humans, and the Krithani were among the quickest. But reflexes only mattered if you had time to use them. Amy had spent the countdown preparing every muscle in her body for this exact movement. By the time the match began, her body already knew what to do. There was no delay between thought and action. Zarketh's brain registered that the match had started. His 4 arms began to move into fighting position. But Amy was already inside his reach, too close for his long limbs to work properly. Her energy baton came up in a smooth, practiced arc. The strike was not wild or desperate. It was precise, controlled, aimed at exactly the right spot. The baton connected with the nerve cluster where his lower left arm joined his body. The energy pulse shot through his nervous system like lightning. Zarketh's arm went numb instantly. His eyes widened in shock. The entire arena fell silent. Thousands of aliens stopped making noise all at once. What they had just seen should not have been possible. A human, a species most of them considered weak and slow, had just landed the first strike on Zarketh before he could defend himself. Amy did not pause to celebrate. She was already moving again, her feet light and quick on the arena floor. Zarketh staggered, trying to process what had happened. His lower left arm hung useless at his side. Anger flooded through him. pushing aside the shock. He roared. The sound was so loud that it shook the arena floor. All three of his working arms swung toward Amy in a massive arc, meant to crush her no matter where she went. The strike had enough power behind it to break bones, to send her flying across the arena floor. But Amy was not there anymore. She dropped low and rolled beneath the sweep of his arms. As she came up behind him, she struck again. This time her target was the back of his right knee. The kick was perfectly placed, hitting the joint at just the right angle. Zarketh's leg hyperextended. The armor plating protected him from serious injury, but his balance was destroyed. The crowd began to murmur. Confused sounds filled the air. Warriors from different species looked at each other, trying to understand what they were watching. This was not how arena matches usually went. Champions typically faced each other directly, power against power, speed against speed. The stronger, faster fighter won. That was how it had always been. But Amy was fighting with completely different rules. She moved like water, flowing around Zarketh's attacks instead of meeting them head-on. She struck at weak points and nerve clusters, places where even the strongest armor could not fully protect. She never stayed in one place long enough for the champion to use his advantages. Zarketh spun around, his three functional arms reaching for her. His movements were fast, faster than any human should be able to avoid. But Amy was not trying to be faster than him. She was being smarter. She ducked under his grasp and drove her baton into his ribcage, right where another nerve cluster sat beneath the armor plates. Another pulse of energy shot through his body. His right arm seized up, the muscles locking tight for a moment. 8 seconds had passed since the match began. Zarketh had not landed a single hit. His breathing came in harsh gasps. The emotion on his face was no longer anger. It was fear. This small human was taking him apart, piece by piece, and he could not stop her. In the viewing platform above, the Earth delegation watched in stunned silence. Kevin's hands gripped the railing so hard his knuckles had turned white. Helen held her data pad but had forgotten to keep typing notes. She just stared at the fight below, her mouth hanging open. Greg stood frozen, barely breathing. Ambassador Henderson watched with intense focus, his experienced eyes beginning to understand the strategy Amy was using. On the arena floor, Zarketh tried to adapt. He was a champion for a reason. He had intelligence along with his strength and speed. He began striking lower, trying to limit the space where Amy could move. He tried to grab instead of punch, hoping to use his superior strength to simply overpower her once he got his hands on her. But every change he made, Amy had already thought of. She had watched 17 of his fights. She knew every habit he had, every pattern he fell into when pressured, every mistake he made without realizing it. She had studied him the way a scientist studies a specimen, noting every detail, every weakness. 15 seconds into the match, Amy saw her opening. Zarketh overextended slightly on a grab attempt. She stepped inside his reach and struck upward with her baton, catching him across the temple. The energy pulse went directly into his skull. For a fraction of a second, his eyes went blank. His movements froze. That fraction of a second was all Amy needed. She swept both his legs out from under him with a smooth, practiced motion. The 8-foot Krathani champion crashed to the arena floor. The impact was so hard it sent vibrations through the structure. Complete silence gripped the arena. In all the years Zarketh had been champion, in all the hundreds of matches he had fought, he had never been knocked down. Never. Not once. Amy stepped back into a ready stance, her baton held in a neutral guard position. She watched as Zarketh struggled to stand. His pride was wounded worse than his body. Every muscle in his frame trembled, not from the nerve strikes, but from humiliation and rage. The champion climbed to his feet slowly. All 4 arms were working again, the nerve disruptions fading, but something had changed in his eyes. The arrogance was gone. The certainty of victory had vanished. In its place was something Zarketh had never felt in the arena before. Doubt. He charged at Amy with everything he had, all technique abandoned, all strategy forgotten, just pure rage driving him forward. His forearms reached out to grab her, to crush her, to make her pay for this humiliation. Amy remained perfectly still. The entire arena held its breath. Zarketh was moving with such force that the impact should destroy her. His size and strength should be overwhelming. This should be the end. At the last possible moment, Amy moved. Not a desperate dive, not a panicked scramble, just a simple sidestep. Minimal movement. Perfectly timed. Zarketh's momentum carried him past her. She extended her leg in a basic trip. The champion's own charge sent him crashing face first into the arena floor for the second time. The crowd erupted. Not in laughter this time, but in shock. Multiple species began arguing with each other in their various languages. The sounds mixed together into chaos. Some aliens stood up from their seats. Others pointed at the arena floor in disbelief. A few of the more experienced warriors in the crowd had started to understand what they were seeing. Amy circled around Zarketh as he pushed himself up. This time he moved even more slowly. She could see the change in his body language. The confidence that had made him play to the crowd before the match began was completely gone. He was beginning to understand something terrible. He could not win this fight. Not with strength, not with speed, not with anything he knew how to do. Zarketh stood up and faced her again. His forearms rose into a defensive posture. He was trying to be patient now, trying to wait for an opening instead of attacking recklessly, but patience was not his ally. It was hers. The longer the fight continued, the more his confidence would crack. Amy feinted to the left. Zarketh reacted immediately, shifting his weight to block. The reaction told Amy exactly what she needed to know about which side he favored for defense. She stored the information and continued to circle. The arena grew quieter. The crowd was watching something they had never seen before. This was not a quick, brutal victory for the champion. This was not a warrior being knocked unconscious in seconds. This was a systematic dismantling. This was a lesson being taught in front of the entire galaxy. Amy rushed forward suddenly, committing to what looked like a full attack. Zarketh responded exactly as she expected, all four arms converging to grab her. But she dropped into a slide, going under his arms and striking upward as she passed beneath him. The energy pulse hit directly into what served as his solar plexus. The champion doubled over, gasping for air. Amy rose behind him and did something that shocked every single being in the arena. She stepped back. She did not strike again. Instead, she stood in a ready stance and waited for Zarketh to recover. The gesture was crystal clear. She was giving him a chance to surrender with dignity. The alternative was for her to continue breaking him down in front of everyone. Zarketh slowly straightened up. His breathing was heavy and ragged. He turned to face. The words echoed through the arena, translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. Amy stood calmly, her baton still ready, while Zarketh struggled to control his trembling arms. Every being in the arena could see what was happening. The human was not just winning. She was teaching. Technique matters, Amy continued, her voice steady and clear. Strategy matters. Adaptability matters. You have the ability to become even greater than you are if you choose to learn, rather than rely only on your natural gifts. Zarketh stared at her. His mandibles clicked together slowly, processing her words. No one had ever spoken to him like this in the arena. Defeated warriors were usually unconscious or too hurt to speak, and victors typically mocked their fallen opponents, rubbing in the humiliation to make the lesson sting. But this human was doing something completely different. She was offering him respect even in defeat. Amy took a breath and spoke again. I am going to give you a choice. You can surrender now with honor, knowing that you fought well but met a different kind of strategy. Or I will end this match the way arena law requires, by making you unable to continue. The choice is yours. The entire arena held its breath. The Krithani delegation sat in their viewing platform, every member frozen in place. They watched their champion, waiting to see what he would do. Some looked angry, others looked confused. A few of the older warriors had expressions that might have been understanding. Ambassador Henderson gripped the railing in the Earth delegation's platform. This moment would define everything. If Zarketh chose to keep fighting, Amy would have to hurt him badly enough that he could not continue. That might create enemies of the Krithani, but if he surrendered, it would show strength of a different kind. The kind that recognized wisdom over ego. Zarketh stood in the center of the arena. His forearms still trembled from the nerve disruptions. His pride lay shattered on the floor around him. His confidence, built over years of easy victories, had been destroyed in less than a minute. He looked at Amy, this small human female who had done what warriors from 17 species could not accomplish. In her eyes, he saw no cruelty, no mockery, just genuine respect for him as a fighter, despite his defeat. She could have humiliated him further. She could have knocked him unconscious and made him look completely helpless. Instead, she was offering him a way to end this with dignity. Slowly, with great effort, Zarketh lowered all 4 of his arms. Then he took a knee. The gesture was unmistakable in any culture. He surrendered. The arena exploded with noise. Some species cheered wildly. Others shouted in disbelief. A few sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they had witnessed. The sound was deafening, a mix of every kind of reaction from every kind of alien. Kliktar stepped forward, his 6 eyes wide with shock. His voice shook slightly as he made the announcement. The match is concluded. The victor, by surrender, is Lieutenant Amy Brooks of Earth. Under arena law, all disputed claims are awarded to Earth. The Krithani Consortium must accept standard council trade agreements with no special provisions. Amy lowered her baton and walked across the arena floor to where Zarketh still knelt. The audience fell quiet again, wondering what would happen next. In Krithani culture, defeated warriors were often mocked by their victors. It was considered part of the lesson, a way to ensure the defeat was never forgotten. But Amy did not mock. She extended her hand to help Zarketh stand. The gesture was so unexpected that the Krithani champion simply stared at her hand for several seconds. He had never seen a victor do this. Slowly, carefully, he reached up with one of his massive hands and allowed the small human to help pull him to his feet. Through the translator, Amy spoke to him directly. Her voice was loud enough for the arena to hear. Defeat is not the end of a warrior's journey. Often, it is the beginning of true growth. I have studied your fighting style and I see tremendous potential beneath the reliance on natural advantages. If you wish, I would be honored to train with you and share some of the techniques that humans have developed. The offer stunned everyone, including Zarketh himself. To offer training to a defeated opponent was not completely unheard of in galactic culture. But it was typically done privately, quietly, to avoid further embarrassment. Amy was offering publicly, in front of the entire arena, treating Zarketh not as a conquered enemy but as a fellow warrior worthy of respect and growth. Zarketh's mandibles clicked in a pattern that indicated deep thought. His culture valued strength above all else, and admitting weakness by accepting training was almost unthinkable. But he had just experienced something that changed his perspective. He had been defeated so thoroughly, so completely, that denying his need to improve would be foolish. And this human had shown him more respect in defeat than most of his own people showed him in victory. He bowed his head to Amy. The gesture meant acceptance. The arena erupted again, this time with a different energy. Discussions broke out everywhere as species reconsidered what they knew about humans. The creatures from the small, distant planet Earth were not what anyone had expected. The Earth delegation made their way down to the arena floor. Ambassador Henderson reached Amy first, and the relief on his face was clear. That was incredible, he said quietly, and terrifying. Please never make me watch you do that again. Amy smiled. I will try not to, sir. Kevin approached next, still looking dazed. I have so many questions. How did you move that fast? How did you know where to hit him? How did you stay so calm? Training, Amy said simply. 15 years of it, and a lot of studying over the past 3 days. Helen was already typing furiously on her datapad. This is going to change everything. Do you realize what you just did? You did not just win a fight. You challenged the entire galaxy's understanding of what makes a warrior strong. Greg just shook his head in amazement. I thought we were going to lose for sure. I thought you were going to die. The Krythani delegation approached. They were led by High Commander Rathkor, an older warrior covered in scars from decades of combat. His bearing spoke of experience and wisdom, instead of anger at their champion's defeat. His face showed intense curiosity. Through his translator, Rathkor addressed Amy directly. In all my years, I have never seen combat philosophy like what you displayed today. The Krythani pride themselves on being the galaxy's finest warriors, but I must admit, we may have become complacent. We have relied too heavily on our natural advantages. He paused, his eyes studying Amy carefully. You offered to train with Zarketh. Would you be willing to extend that offer to other Krythani warriors? We have much to learn from your approach. Ambassador Henderson stepped forward smoothly, recognizing the diplomatic opportunity. Perhaps we could arrange formal training exchanges as part of the new agreement between Earth and the Krythani Consortium. Human combat instructors could work with Krythani warriors, and in exchange, humans could learn from Krythani experience in other areas of warfare and tactics. Rathkor's mandibles clicked in what might have been approval. That would be acceptable. More than acceptable. It would be valuable. The group moved to a private diplomatic chamber to work out the formal agreements. As they walked through the station corridors, various aliens stopped to stare at Amy. Word had already spread throughout Station Kelvar 9 at incredible speed. The human who shattered the arena champion's pride had become an instant legend. In the diplomatic chamber, Kliktar presided over the formal transfer of mining rights and the drafting of new trade agreements. The atmosphere was businesslike, but not hostile. The Krythani delegation, rather than being angry about their loss, seemed energized by the prospect of training exchanges. High Commander Rathkor explained his thinking. My species has won consistently for so long that we may have stopped truly learning and evolving. We train our warriors the same way we have for thousands of years. We assume that because it has always worked, it always will work. But you humans showed us something different today. During a break in the formal proceedings, Zarketh approached Amy. He moved stiffly, still recovering from the nerve strikes and the impact of being thrown to the ground twice. Through his translator, he asked the question that had been bothering him since the match ended. How did you move so quickly at the start? How did you close the distance before my reflexes could respond? Krythani reflexes are faster than human reflexes. This is a known fact. The formal proceedings concluded with both delegations satisfied. Earth had secured mining rights to the asteroid belt, which would provide valuable resources for decades to come. The Krythani had gained something potentially more valuable. They had discovered that their warrior culture, strong as it was, could still grow and evolve through learning from other species. As Ambassador Henderson reviewed the final documents, he realized something important. What had started as a simple resource dispute had become Earth's true introduction to the wider galaxy, not as a primitive species that got lucky with technology, but as a people with unique knowledge and capabilities worth learning from. The news of the match spread through galactic communication networks with incredible speed. Within hours, dozens of species were requesting information about human combat techniques. Several sent formal inquiries asking if Earth would be willing to send observers or instructors to their own military academies. Helen showed the incoming messages to Ambassador Henderson, her face showing both excitement and concern. Sir, we are getting requests from everywhere. The Vorians want to arrange training exchanges. The cliques are asking for documentation of our fighting philosophies. Even the Viridians, who usually stay neutral on everything, want to know more about our approach to combat. Henderson rubbed his tired eyes. How many requests total? 23 so far. And more are coming in every hour, Helen said. Sir, I do not think Earth is prepared for this level of attention. We are still a small player in galactic politics. We do not have the infrastructure to provide training to multiple alien species. I know, Henderson said quietly. But we cannot ignore this opportunity either. We need to find a balance. 3 weeks after the arena match, Amy Brooks found herself in an unexpected situation. Instead of returning to Earth as originally planned, she had been asked to remain on Station Kelvar 9 as a temporary combat consultant. The station commander, a diplomatic Viridian named Sorelin, believed that having Amy available for questions and demonstrations would help manage the flood of requests coming from various species. The training sessions with Zarketh had become daily events. What started as private lessons quickly attracted an audience. Warrior representatives from 7 different species now observed the sessions regularly, taking notes and asking questions. Amy had to adapt her teaching style to account for wildly different body types and abilities. The Krithani with their 4 arms needed to learn balance techniques completely different from human methods. The Clicks, with their 6 legs and insectoid bodies, moved in ways that seemed impossible to Amy. The Morphids, who had no solid skeleton at all, required explanations of concepts like leverage and momentum that worked with their gelatinous bodies. What surprised Amy most was how eager everyone was to learn. She had expected resistance, pride, and skepticism. Warriors from proud species do not typically admit they need to improve, but instead, she found genuine curiosity. The galaxy's warrior cultures had become set in their ways over thousands of years. The idea that technique and strategy could sometimes matter more than raw physical ability was revolutionary to many of them. Zarketh proved to be an excellent student. His natural athleticism, combined with his newfound humility, allowed him to absorb techniques rapidly. In their most recent session, he successfully used human grappling concepts to defeat a Vorian opponent who outweighed him by 200 pounds. The victory was small, just a training exercise, but it represented a fundamental shift in how Zarketh approached combat. During a break between training sessions, Zarketh spoke to Amy privately. "I need to thank you for something," he said through his translator. "Not just for the training, but for the way you defeated me." Amy looked at him curiously. "What do you mean? If you had simply knocked me unconscious in the first few seconds, it would have been just another loss." "Painful, but ultimately meaningless," Zarketh explained. "Instead, you carefully showed me every mistake I was making. You gave me chances to adapt and learn even during the match itself. You gave me something more valuable than victory. You gave me understanding of my own limitations and a path to exceed them." Amy nodded slowly. "That was the goal. Defeating you was necessary to win the match, but helping you grow as a warrior was more important in the long run." My people are beginning to understand this now," Zarketh said. "High Commander Rothkor has ordered changes to our training programs. We are focusing more on technique and less on just physical conditioning. Some of the older warriors resist, but the younger ones are eager to learn." The sessions continued day after day. Amy emphasized repeatedly that the goal was not to make everyone fight like humans. Each species needed to understand the principles behind effective combat and then adapt them to their own physiology and psychology. A Krithani fighter would never move exactly like a human, nor should they try, but understanding concepts like timing, leverage, and momentum could make any warrior more effective. Meanwhile, Ambassador Henderson was navigating the complex political situation that Amy's victory had created. Some species saw Earth's demonstration of combat expertise as threatening. They worried that humans might position themselves as a new warrior culture, challenging the established order. Others saw it as an opportunity for alliance and partnership. The Galactic Council itself had taken notice. Several senior council members requested meetings to discuss Earth's potential role in council security forces. Henderson had to be very careful with his responses. He emphasized that Earth had no desire to challenge anyone or position itself as a warrior culture. The combat skills Amy demonstrated came from Earth's long history of warfare, much of it tragic. Humans had learned to fight effectively out of necessity, not desire. The goal now was to share that knowledge so others could defend themselves more effectively. Ideally, this would reduce the overall need for violence across the galaxy. Henderson's diplomatic skills were being tested every day as he tried to balance opportunity with responsibility. The mining operation in the asteroid belt began smoothly. Several species, including the Krithani, participated as agreed partners rather than competitors. Ships from multiple civilizations worked together, sharing resources and expertise. The arrangement proved more profitable for everyone involved than a competitive approach would have been. It created an economic foundation for the growing cultural exchange. Back on Earth, the reaction to Amy's victory was intense. General Raymond Brooks, Amy's father and head of Earth's combined military forces, sent her a communication. He congratulated her on the match and the diplomatic success it created. But he also expressed concern. "Amy, you have generated a tension that Earth is not prepared to handle," he said in the recorded message. "Dozens of species are asking about military alliances, training programs, and security partnerships. Our military is still relatively small. We focus primarily on system defense. We are not ready to project power across the galaxy or provide training to multiple alien species simultaneously." Amy understood the problem immediately. She had inadvertently positioned Earth as having capabilities beyond what they could actually deliver at scale. Yes, human combat techniques were effective. Yes, she was skilled. But she was one person with 15 years of training and natural talent. Earth could not simply produce hundreds of fighters at her level on demand. She discussed the issue with Ambassador Henderson during their next meeting. Together, they devised a strategy that might work. Rather than trying to meet every request for training and assistance, Earth would establish a structured cultural exchange program. The focus would be on sharing combat philosophy and techniques in a sustainable way. Species interested in learning would send small groups of representatives to Earth for extended training programs. Earth would send small teams of instructors to key locations throughout the galaxy. The emphasis would be on teaching principles that could be adapted, not on trying to directly train entire alien militaries. Henderson presented the proposal to the various species that had made requests. Most accepted it gladly. It established Earth as a valuable partner without overextending limited resources. It also gave Earth time to learn from other species, absorbing their knowledge in areas where humans were not as advanced. The approach created a framework for long-term cooperation. The observers discussed what they had seen long after the demonstration ended. Amy moved through the crowd, answering questions and clarifying points about technique and strategy. Warriors from different species wanted to understand specific aspects of what Zarketh had done. How he had changed his approach. How he had adapted human concepts to his own four-armed physiology. How he had overcome the natural instinct to rely on strength alone. A click warrior named Chitrock approached Amy with particularly thoughtful questions. "You teach that technique can overcome natural advantage. But is there not a limit? Surely a small, weak fighter cannot defeat a much larger, stronger one if the larger one also has good technique." Amy considered the question carefully. "You are right that there are limits. Size and strength matter. Speed and reflexes matter. But most warriors never reach the limit of what technique can accomplish because they rely too heavily on their natural gifts. They stop learning and growing. The question is not whether technique can always overcome physical advantage. The question is whether you have developed your technique to its full potential." Chitrock's antennae twitched in a gesture that indicated understanding. "So the goal is not to ignore physical training, but to balance it with technical training." "Exactly," Amy said. "A warrior who develops both body and skill will always exceed a warrior who develops only one." The conversation continued for another hour, with various warriors joining in to share perspectives from their own cultures. Amy found the exchange fascinating. Each species had developed combat methods that worked for their unique biology. The Clicks used their 6 legs for incredible mobility. The Morphids used their ability to change shape. The Vorians used their massive strength and endurance, but all of them had fallen into the same trap. They had optimized their natural advantages without developing the technical skills that would make those advantages even more effective. Amy's victory over Zarketh had revealed this gap to the entire galaxy. As the day ended, Amy made her way back to her temporary quarters to prepare for departure. Tomorrow she would board a transport back to Earth. She felt good about what had been accomplished. The training exchanges were established. Multiple species were reconsidering their approach to combat and warrior culture. And most importantly, the mockery and humiliation that had been central to arena culture were beginning to fade. Zarketh found her as she was packing her few belongings. He stood in the doorway, all four arms hanging respectfully at his sides. "May I speak with you before you leave?" "Of course," Amy said, gesturing for him to enter. Zarketh came in and sat carefully on a bench designed for multiple body types. For a moment he was quiet, his mandibles clicking softly as he organized his thoughts. Finally, he spoke. "You did not just defeat me in the arena that day. You shattered my pride, my assumptions, and my limitations. At the time, I felt only humiliation and anger, but now I understand that you gave me a gift. You broke those things so I could rebuild myself into something better." Amy listened quietly, letting him continue. "I was the arena champion," Zarketh said. "I held that title for 2 full cycles. I defeated warriors from 17 different species, and I learned nothing from any of those victories. I became arrogant. I believed I was unbeatable because of what I was born as, not because of what I had developed through training and discipline." He paused, his eyes meeting Amy's. "Then you came. Small, weak by Krathani standards, from a species we barely knew existed. And you destroyed me in 47 seconds, not with superior strength or speed, but with something I had never bothered to develop: skill, strategy, discipline, understanding." "You are not weak, Zarketh," Amy said gently. "You were simply untrained. There is a difference." "I know that now," he replied. "And I am grateful. In the past 3 weeks, I have learned more about combat than I learned in the previous 3 years. My species is learning too. The younger warriors especially. They see what is possible when we combine our natural advantages with proper technique." Amy smiled. "I am glad. That was always the goal. Not to embarrass you or your people, but to show that there is always room to grow and improve, no matter how strong you already are." Zarketh stood and bowed his head in respect. "When you return to Earth, know that you have changed the galaxy. Not through conquest or domination, but through teaching and sharing. That is a greater victory than any arena match." After Zarketh left, Amy finished packing and spent the evening reviewing reports from Ambassador Henderson. The diplomatic situation had stabilized nicely. The initial concern from some species about human military capabilities had eased as Henderson explained Earth's actual size and limitations. The focus had shifted to mutual learning and cultural exchange, which was sustainable long-term. The mining operation in the asteroid belt was exceeding projections. The partnership approach, with multiple species working together, had proven far more efficient than competitive bidding would have been. Economic analysts were already suggesting that this model could be applied to other disputed resources throughout the galaxy. The next morning, Amy made her way to the transport docks. The Earth delegation was already there, preparing to board. Ambassador Henderson looked tired but satisfied. Kevin and Helen were comparing notes on everything they had observed. Greg looked relieved to be going home. Before boarding, Amy took one last look at Station Kelvar 9. The massive structure hung in space, a hub of activity where dozens of species came together for trade, diplomacy, and cultural exchange. 3 weeks ago, she had walked into an arena where thousands of aliens laughed at her. Now, warriors from across the galaxy were studying human combat techniques and reconsidering their own approaches to training. The transport departed, beginning the long journey back to Earth. During the trip, Amy had time to reflect on everything that had happened. She thought about that moment in the arena when Zarketh had pointed at her and laughed. He had been so certain of his superiority, so confident that his size and strength made him unbeatable. She had shattered that pride before he could even blink. But more importantly, she had shown him and the entire galaxy that strength comes in many forms. Physical power matters. Speed matters. But technique, strategy, discipline, and the wisdom to keep learning matter just as much. The transport arrived at Earth 3 days later. General Raymond Brooks met them at the orbital station. And the pride on his face when he saw his daughter was clear. He pulled her into a brief hug before stepping back to maintain military propriety. "You have made quite an impression out there," he said. "The entire galaxy is talking about the human who defeated the arena champion." I hope they are talking about more than just the defeat, Amy replied. The whole point was to teach, not just to win. They are, General Brooks confirmed. We have had more diplomatic contacts in the past 3 weeks than in the entire 3 years since we joined the Galactic Council. Most of them are positive. Species want to learn from us, work with us, trade with us. You opened doors we did not even know existed. Ambassador Henderson joined them. We need to be careful how we proceed. Earth has capabilities, but we also have limitations. We cannot become the galaxy's combat trainers. We do not have the people or resources for that. Agreed, General Brooks said. But we can be selective partners. We can establish relationships with key species and build from there. The training exchange program you set up is a good model. Over the following weeks, Earth began implementing the new programs carefully. Small groups of alien warriors arrived to train at human military academies. Human instructors were sent to select locations throughout the galaxy. The exchanges were structured to be educational and cultural, not purely military. Amy returned to her duties as a combat instructor, but now her classes included alien students alongside human ones. Teaching Krithani, Clix, and Vorians alongside humans created interesting challenges, but it also created opportunities for everyone to learn from each other. 6 months after the arena match, Amy received a communication from Zarketh. He had continued training extensively and had returned to arena competition. In his first match since his defeat, he faced a warrior from a species called the Drakon, known for their aggressive fighting style and natural armor. The match lasted 3 minutes. Zarketh won decisively, using a combination of his natural Krithani advantages and the human techniques he had learned. More importantly, after his victory, he helped his opponent stand and offered to share training methods. The gesture was broadcast across the galactic networks. The culture of mockery and humiliation that had defined arena combat for generations was changing. Warriors were beginning to see each other as colleagues who could learn from one another, rather than enemies who must be dominated and humiliated. The shift was slow, but it was real. Amy watched the recording of Zarketh's match and smiled. This was what she had hoped for. Not just one victory in one arena, but a change in how warriors across the galaxy approached their craft. Combat would always exist, disputes would always arise, but perhaps they could be handled with more respect and less cruelty. Earth's position in the Galactic Council continued to improve. The mining operation provided valuable resources. The cultural exchanges built relationships with dozens of species. And most importantly, Earth had established itself not as a threat or a competitor, but as a partner with unique knowledge to share. In a meeting with the Council's senior members, Ambassador Henderson was asked to explain the philosophy behind Earth's approach to combat training. He thought carefully before answering. Humans have fought wars for our entire history, Henderson said. We have killed each other over resources, territory, beliefs, and pride. We have developed highly effective methods for combat because we have had no choice. But along the way, we learned something important. The strongest warrior is not the one who wins through force alone. The strongest warrior is the one who knows when to fight, how to fight effectively, and how to help others grow stronger. A council member from the Viridian species responded, "You say your history is full of warfare, yet you advocate for cooperation and teaching. Is this not contradictory?" "No," Henderson replied. "It is because of our violent history that we value cooperation. We know the cost of conflict. We know that while fighting skills are necessary, the goal should always be to reduce the need for fighting. Teaching others to be stronger and more skilled does not create more conflict. It creates mutual respect and understanding." The council members considered this perspective. It was different from how most species thought about military strength. The usual approach was to keep advantages secret, to maintain superiority through information control. But Earth was openly sharing its combat knowledge, strengthening potential rivals. Yet, the results spoke for themselves. Species that learned from human techniques did not become hostile toward Earth. Instead, they became partners and allies. The sharing of knowledge created bonds stronger than any military alliance. Back on Earth, Amy continued her work as an instructor. She trained both human and alien students, teaching them that true strength comes from continuous learning and improvement. She emphasized respect for opponents, adaptability in the face of challenges, and the wisdom to know that natural advantages are just the starting point, not the destination. And sometimes, when teaching a new class, she would tell them about the day she walked into an arena where an 8-foot champion pointed at her and laughed. She would describe how his arrogance blinded him, how his pride prevented him from preparing properly, how his reliance on natural advantages left him vulnerable to someone with better technique. Then she would explain how that same champion became one of her best students, how he learned from his defeat and became stronger for it, how he began teaching others with respect instead of mockery. The lesson was always the same. Pride without substance is weakness. Strength without skill is wasted. And the greatest victory is not defeating your opponent, but helping them become better than they were before. The galaxy was learning that lesson slowly. But it was learning, and it had all started with one human woman who refused to be intimidated by laughter and pointing, who knew that the match was already won before the countdown even ended, and who understood that shattering someone's pride could be the first step toward building something better, rather than short-term demands. It was sustainable and mutually beneficial. Several council members privately praised Henderson for his careful handling of the situation. On her final day at Station Kelvar 9, before returning to Earth, Amy oversaw one last training demonstration. Zarketh would face off against a Vorian champion named Throck, who had volunteered to test the new techniques. The match was not official, just a friendly demonstration. But hundreds of observers packed the training center to watch. The fight began, and immediately everyone could see the difference in Zarketh. He moved with more purpose and less reliance on pure strength. He watched for openings instead of charging forward. He used leverage and timing to compensate for the Vorian's size advantage. Throck was larger and stronger than Zarketh, and for the first minute that advantage showed clearly. But then Zarketh began applying what he had learned. He stopped trying to match strength with strength. He targeted weak points. He used Throck's momentum against him. The match shifted. Zarketh did not win. Throck had too much experience and his own well-developed skills. But Zarketh held his own against an opponent who would have dominated him completely a month ago. The match ended in a respectful draw, both fighters showing mutual appreciation for each other's abilities. The demonstration concluded with both warriors discussing what they had learned. There was no mockery, no humiliation, just professional respect between skilled fighters. The contrast with the old arena culture was stark and obvious. Amy smiled and gestured for him to sit. She sat across from him and explained patiently. Reflexes are how quickly you respond to something you see or feel. But I did not start moving when the match began. I started moving in my mind the moment I volunteered to be champion. By the time the countdown finished, my body already knew exactly what it needed to do. My muscles were ready. My angle was calculated. My target was selected. When the signal came, there was no delay between thought and action, because the thought had already occurred. Zarketh's eyes widened as understanding hit him. I lost the match before it even started. You lost the match because you spent those final seconds laughing and posing instead of preparing, Amy said gently. Your arrogance blinded you to the threat standing right in front of you. The Krithani warrior was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke again, his voice softer than before. Pride is a strength among my people. But today I learned it can also be a weakness. Pride is not bad, Amy said, but it must be earned continuously, not taken for granted. Every match, every fight, every challenge must be approached with respect, regardless of how weak an opponent might appear. Zarketh nodded slowly. It was a hard lesson, but a necessary one. Amy, and for the first time since the match began, there was something like respect in his eyes. But his pride still would not let him quit. He was the champion. He had a reputation built over 2 full cycles. To surrender to a human would destroy everything. He attacked again. This time, without rage, but with desperation. His movements were more controlled, more careful. But Amy had already mapped every aspect of how he fought. She defended easily, redirecting his strikes instead of blocking them, using his own momentum to throw him off balance repeatedly. At 45 seconds, Amy landed 3 quick strikes in succession. 2 nerve clusters in his right arms, then 1 in his left shoulder. The energy pulses combined, and Zarketh's arms began to shake uncontrollably. He could barely lift them. Amy stepped back again and spoke. Her voice carried across the silent arena through the translator system. "You are a strong warrior. But strength alone is not enough. The space." 20 seconds. 15 seconds. 10 seconds. Zarketh spread all 4 arms wide, playing to the crowd. He was so confident that he turned partially away from Amy to bask in the audience's approval. The laughter continued. No one believed this would last more than a few seconds. 5 seconds. 4. 3. 2. 1. 4. The match began. And Zarketh turned back to face Amy, still grinning, his 4 arms rising to ready position. But Amy was already moving. Before his superior reflexes could register the change, before he could shift his stance or raise a defense, before he could even stop laughing, Amy closed the distance between them with explosive speed. Everything changed in that single moment. The laughter died as if someone had flipped a switch, and Zarketh's pride began to shatter.